And I can also make the same for these imagined more abstract bases. But these abstract bases also raise a very important question, which is the core of what we are talking about today. Why do we do this? Like, why do we have these different bases? You'll hear a lot of theories about that. One of which is most important is that it creates kind of complexity in a perfume. It it does have this like addition of bases and accords together create this kind of super complex nature for a perfume. But this is very surface information kind of analysis, because again, why? If we say that this is the only reason, I can actually tell you that each base, one of the bases is Clematis, for example. All these bases could be perfumes on their own. Like if you smell this like that, just directly here, this is called Melitus base. This smells like a perfume. It doesn't need anything else to be added to it. So why do you add to it? And to answer this question, I have actually 3 theories. So the first theory is totally my own analysis and conclusion. The first one is that during the early 20th century, when they were making all these experiments with perfumes and different perfumes, they were basically experimenting a lot, and they had a lot of nice accidents and nice blends. The most important thing about these kinds of bases are that they are complete accords and complete perfumes in some cases. They are so complex, you can even say it's a perfume. It doesn't need anything else to be added to it. And this is in itself something that's very important, because it tells me that most of these things were not necessarily planned. They were the result of experimentation, and they came up with something nice, and then they said, okay, that's something that we are gonna do again and again and again. And then they called it as, let's say, Cuir de Russie or Mousse de Saxe, etc. That would be the first conclusion from the analysis. The second conclusion would be that they had also a lot of materials to use, and the usage of these materials in perfumery is not necessarily always the same. Like, for example, you use less vanilla than you do use bergamot, usually. You use the more expensive things in lesser quantities. So it might be that they were trying to create blends so that they would use the materials that they have in excess. This could be another theory. I'm not sure. I'm just giving my analysis. The third analysis would be that these bases, once they were confident enough that they were nice on their own, they started using this as some kind of signature for my own brand. For example, when we spoke about the rose, if I'm a perfumer and I create my rose accord, for example. Like, for example, we have rose accords. As Elixir Attar, we have these, which are made from our own interpretation of rose. So if these perfumers back then had this Mousse de Saxe base, they would use it in all of their perfumes with different concentrations, like some kind of signature in the scent, that this is our company's. In one way, it makes their job standardized because they already have one main ingredient here. For example, one of the perfumes had a Mousse de Saxe, I'm not gonna name it, 33% of the composition. That's third of the composition was this base. And from the other, on the other hand, it gives them a signature. And this actually would have been the entry to the, I'd say, severe, like sudden appearance of bases in perfumery in the end of 20 in the beginning of the 20th century, because once this became a fact that we have these bases, which I say now, a lot of which are complete perfumes. A lot of other houses, let's say House X, found this base from House Y to be nice, perfumery house, I mean. They would take it, have some small additions, and have a new perfume. They did not need to create new perfumes from scratch. I think that is one of the most important things that happened with these bases. One of the most famous bases ever is the Ambreine base, for example. It's base for perfumes like Chanel No. 5, the original one. This base was definitely used and used and used and used in multiple perfumes after that. I just quoted the most famous of them. So in this case, definitely there is the element of having a big building block of the perfume. But I don't think that that was the intention from the beginning. The intention was that they have their own signature, and then once they found that this building block is nice, well, we can sort of tweak it a little bit to be a new perfume. And the tweaks did not need to be very complex, like building a perfume from scratch.